Our level of negative equity is now the highest in the UK, with 35% of us owing more on our houses than they're actually worth. We're slipping behind the rest of the UK in just about every measure of employment, growth and productivity. That's according to the latest economic outlook from accountancy firm PricewaterhouseCoopers. Chris is on the line. Morning to you, Chris.
Morning, Stephen.
Good morning to you. What's your situation, Chris?
I have a shortfall of about £50,000 to £60,000, depending on whether you believe the estate agents or the bank. House has been for sale for a year and it's just not shifting, so we're continually having to lower the price. And the bank really weren't any help until we stopped paying the mortgage.
And what then happened?
Well, at the start, I went to them to ask, what we could do, and it was really, as you're paying the mortgage, there's very little you can do. And I took independent advice, and they said the banks wouldn't help while you're paying it because there's no incentive to, like any business. So once we started missing mortgage payments, you become a stressed borrower. And they were a little bit more helpful. Now it's still very much, they would be looking for the full settlement at the moment, but or for the full shortfall, but at the moment they're starting to negotiate. And
do you feel, whether people feel it or not, is kind of irrelevant, but do you feel foolish for getting into this situation? So many of us did it.
In hindsight, you do, when the property was at its peak. Like, you can look back on it now and just say it was absolute madness. But, you want to buy a property, so you get in the property ladder. This has just happened.
You put your house on for 89,000, you dropped it to 79,000. How many viewings have you had in the last month?
2.
Even dropping in 10 grand?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do?
I have to drop it another 10, I have to drop it another 10. My attitude with the bank is, even if we get 60 for it, it's more than they're going to get. So, the only alternative is handing the keys, and they might get 30 or 40 in an auction. So we'll take what we can take, and then we'll worry about the shortfall afterwards.
Scary, Chris, isn't it?
It is, but, it's not as scary as it was at the start.
And you can't just sit on the house and wait for it to go back up, whatever length of time that would take.
You could take 15 years, 20 years. If you look at house prices at the moment, depending on the newspaper reports, they're never going up 1.5%, 2%. So you either sit it out or you just take the hit now.
It is an astonishing figure, in my view, that a third of us are in negative equity. Over a third.
It is, but I think what a lot of people are doing at the moment is just struggling on and paying the mortgage. And I think if a lot more people stop paying their mortgages and stuff like that, the banks might try and help them a little bit more.
John Minnis is with us today, estate agent with offices in Hollywood and Donaghadee. Morning to you, John.
Morning, Stephen.
Good morning to you. And the economist and wealth manager, Jonathan Davis. Morning to you, Jonathan.
Hiya.
Good morning. Well, John Minnis first. What a desperate situation we seem to be in Northern Ireland. Is there any green shoots of recovery in the housing market?
Well, it is a desperate situation for a lot of people, and some of these go out to Chris and anyone in his situation. The negative equity side of things, yep. Well, there's so many of us involved in that. But yes, there are green shoots within the housing market. In fact, we've just opened a new branch in Ballyhackamore in Belfast because some areas are performing actually very, very well. The level of interest in property and the appetite to purchase again is back. That isn't just investors, that's families and right across the board.
Yeah, but back at what prices? Prices that's going to push people.
Stephen, prices are down, and prices had to come down to meet a level where appetite was there. But we now have a few extra lenders in the Northern Ireland market who haven't been in the business of lending money in Northern Ireland for 7 years. Now they've seen transactions grow and they want a piece of the action, and that has created a little more competition within the mortgage market and it's helping some people.
Would you concur with what this survey seems to be saying, PricewaterhouseCoopers, that a third of us are in negative equity? Is that your feeling on the ground?
Well, I have no measure of it, but I suppose if I speak to my friends and peers and colleagues and all the rest, I would say probably it is something like 1 in 3, which is terribly unfortunate, but it's not the end of the road. There's actually mechanics now out there, financial mechanics, that will help people in negative equity. We used to talk about buy to let, but there's now let to buy services. And we have a very good financial advisor within our firm who is there to help people in exactly that situation.
Jonathan Davis?
The first time I was on your television show was February 2007, and that was 4 months before the peak in Northern Ireland house prices. And the reason why you invited me on your show was because it was breathtaking that according to the Nationwide, house prices in the prior year, in the year to February 2007, prices had risen 50%. You know as well as I do the numbers of people who took out 100% mortgages, 120% mortgages, even 80 or 90% mortgages. And the simple fact is, house prices in Northern Ireland are down over 50%. I'm surprised. He says ruefully, it's only 35% of households are in negative equity. And the suggestion that it's not the end of the world, well, I'll tell you, it is for lots of people. They are now in a zombie state. They are working for the government in terms of taxes, the bank, and themselves in that order. And I cannot see how many of those folk are ever going to get out of it until the government has a radical change in its economic policies.
Well, what do you think could be done? What do you do if you're sitting in negative equity?
Well, I'll tell you what, your first chap who basically told the bank we're not going to pay anymore and started getting action, there's an idea.
Well, you're supposed to honour your loans, though. If you can.
That's based upon an honourable loan in the first place. The bankers knew full well that the reckless loans, whether it was to Greece or to buy-to-letters in the Republic of Ireland, or to people who didn't know what they were doing, youngsters buying on this mythical ladder after prices had risen 500%. Think about it. The bankers knew they could continue making all those loans, and when they went bad, the bankers would be bailed out. Funnily enough, that's exactly what's happened. There were dishonourable loans in the first place. Well, people should start taking personal action because the government isn't going to bail the people out. They're bailing the wrong people out.
Like, relatively speaking, Northern Ireland is in a horrendous way compared to any other region in the UK. Number of households in negative equity in the southwest of England, 6%. Northern Ireland, 35%. Number of houses in negative equity in the southeast, 5%. In East Anglia, 8%. In Scotland, 11%. In Wales, 14%. We have more than threefold the number of houses in negative equity in Northern Ireland than in Scotland. John Minnis, it is actually astonishing when you look at that table.
Yep, those statistics are astonishing. I don't disagree with them, but I do disagree with Davis that it's the end of the world. And I think irresponsible chat like that is no good for the people in that situation. I mean, there is support and there are mechanisms out there to help those people that have found themselves in that terribly unfortunate position. And I do hold the banks entirely responsible and the government for their lack of support around it. But I'm actually president of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and I'm dealing with the business community on a day-to-day basis. And the business community, whether it be retail or services, are sick to the back teeth of this utter negative spin that is put on anything to do with the Northern Ireland economy. I mean, it quite incredible that
Well, hold on a minute. Negative spin, you call it. The Northern Ireland Economic Outlook published
is not good.
Published yesterday. Hold on a minute. Hold on a moment. It says Northern Ireland has the lowest level of business confidence among the 12 UK regions.
Well, when our media portray it in such a fashion, is it any wonder the business confidence is low?
This is a PwC survey. This is not the media.
Okay, well,
this is a proper survey.
Surveyor survey for the last 3 surveys, and the Ulster University survey for the last 3 surveys. In terms of the housing market, has actually been positive, but there's been no reports on your show or anywhere else in the media to support that.
Well, let's state facts here.
I'm talking about facts.
Well, let's state facts here. We have the second highest level of unemployment.
That is a fact.
In the UK.
That is a fact.
Our long-term unemployment is almost double the UK average.
Yeah, and
that's not spin. That's the media reporting hard facts. And I'll tell you what, someone in Stormont, this is well beyond your brief, John.
Report the negative facts.
We don't just report negative facts.
Well, you do.
Sorry?
To my eyes and the eyes of the business community out there in Northern Ireland, we do.
Jonathan Davis, John Minnis has suggested your conversation this morning has been irresponsible.
Yes, indeed, I heard that word.
Tell someone in a negative
also irresponsible position, may I say,
at the end of the world, I think is extremely irresponsible.
Sorry, can I answer the question, please?
Go ahead.
Apparently, it was also irresponsible of me to go on to your show in 2007 and forecast, I don't have a crystal ball, but based on economic analysis, forecast that house prices in Northern Ireland would fall 50%. Your audience laughed. They're not laughing now. The realities of the economic position is that one of the things that the government and the bankers have done is this funding for lending scheme, which makes it easier to lend. And no doubt, some first-time buyers are jumping up saying that's great. It means they can borrow a lot of money. Think about it. And estate agents and bankers are happy. But think about this. The way the banks have paid for lower interest rates is they've cut the rates on saving. Yet again, the prudent bailing out the imprudent. What we need in order to get the economy growing is actually to get rid of the deadwood. We need to hike interest rates. We need to stop bailing out banks. We need to let the people that are, the companies that are currently zombie companies being kept alive by an inappropriate misallocation of resources, let them go bankrupt. Let the house prices do what they're going to do. And you know what? The savers will have confidence to spend because they're actually getting a decent interest rate on their money. The buyers will come in and buy the houses because the prices are reasonable. The businesses will start up because the cost of living...
Yeah, but there are real lives behind that, Jonathan Davis. It rolls off your tongue.
We're going to get economic growth. This way, the current way, we will have depression for 30 years.
It rolls off your tongue saying let them go bankrupt. Those are real lives, real families who would become homeless.
No, that's absolute nonsense. That is typical media spin. They would not become homeless because the government would look after them. But just because people are still paying mortgages on properties that, in my view, will never get back to the value that they were at, and I mean never, in which case the only people who are being sustained right now are the elite in the financial community.
John Minnis?
I think never is quite some statement.
Well, never in our lifetimes.
I think that's another great statement.
So when do you think we'll recover to pre-2006, to the 2006 bubble price?
I haven't a crystal ball.
It's going to be a long time, John.
Nor does Davis. But what I can tell you, and really all I can comment on, is what's happening in the market at the minute, as I see it, from ground level. Now, there in certain regions, and it is always a geographical spread from Belfast city centre outwards, some of these areas are performing very, very well. There's an appetite for property. We have bidding situations on houses. Now, if you'd asked me this time last year, it did happen, but it was once in the blue moon. Now it is happening on more than an occasional basis. And my clients would support me in this. There's evidence in the housing market from the last three reports that are always at least 3 to 6 months behind what is happening on the ground, and the last three reports have all been positive.
Stephen,
So, it has to be a better picture out there than what we're portraying from the PwC report that we're talking about today.
Well, the council...
Hold on, come on this programme to get into
of course,
a negative position with the Northern Ireland economy and slate it like it has been done over the past 7 years. If the banks are coming back in to lend mortgages in Northern Ireland, they are doing that for one reason, and they're doing it because they want a piece of the action.
Stephen, the big picture is, and this is what your listeners need to get to grips with, for 40 years we had falling interest rates and rising lending. That's what created, for example, a housing bubble. Now where we are is we have the lowest interest rates in 300 years' history of the Bank of England. Now, anything which is at such a low is unlikely to go lower. The deposit rate is 0.5%. How much lower can it go? The country has been downgraded, which means that we have lost a AAA rating, we've gone to AA. That means that there is a bit of edginess with regards to global markets and the UK PLC. The next time we get downgraded, we'll go from AA to single A. What that means is, I'm trying to be brief, what that means is that some smart money will start selling off UK government gilts. When we get downgraded again, and I say when, and I'm talking about in the next few years, there will be an avalanche of money leaving the UK. That is when our interest rates will start rising, and I tell you, they fell for 40 years. They'll rise for at least 20 years. You tell me, what's that going to do to the housing market?
Okay. The Council of Mortgage Lenders, their figures show that since 2005, around 69,000 people, some 35%, are in respect of their properties now in negative equity. That's more than twice the level of the next most distressed region. Also, this the PwC have reported the NISRA LPS Residential Property Price Index. They have showed that the average property price here in Northern Ireland is now £111,000. That's a 52% fall. 52% fall from the peak of 2007. Stephen's on the line. Morning, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen. How's it going?
What's your story, Stephen?
Well, Stephen, we bought a house in 2007, actually just at the peak of it, and it cost, it was $150,000 it cost. Within a few months, we had lost about, it was about $70,000 we'd lost on it, and due to a matrimonial breakdown, Stephen, we had to sell the house eventually, and the house sold for $48,000. So I'm left with just over $100,000 of debt currently at the moment.
So you bought a house for $150,000 and you had to sell it for $48,000?
Yeah, well, because of obviously in the circumstances of a matrimonial breakdown, all assets we sold. And that's basically what the house was being valued at. I have letters to prove it. I'm labelled with a debt now of $100,000. Like, I will never get on the property ladder ever again. And there was no help for me whatsoever at the time. We got a 100% mortgage. We got interest only. We were attracted to low payments, no deposit. And within months, obviously the housing market crashed. Our house was valued way below $150,000, and then eventually we had to sell it for, it sold just over $48,000.
You see, my view, my personal view, is that this is a huge story in Northern Ireland, that a third of us are in negative equity. And you're a case in point, Stephen. Obviously your circumstances are very different from what this survey's talking about. But to be straddled now with £100,000 of debt, never to be able to get onto the property ladder again, in your view?
Well, Stephen, I never will, because I've checked all the options. I mean, there's no lender will ever touch me. Co-ownership will never come near me, because co-ownership, you have to have all your previous debt cleared off. I will not declare bankrupt. The easy option for me, Stephen, is to walk in the court today, pay £500 and go bankrupt.
Why don't you do that?
Because, well, Stephen, I feel that I should work towards paying that off. It's just something that I feel personally. But I know the easy option is I can go bankrupt, and then for the next 6 years I will never. I mean, if you're bankrupt, you wouldn't even get a fucking donor card, for goodness sake. You're that bad. So I'm trying to obviously negotiate with the lender solicitors to try and sort of get things paid off. But I had no help. I had no support whatsoever, and I know that I'm not a one-off. There is other cases out there, Stephen, who are in some position to me, where they took a large mortgage, with 100% interest only, and are now sitting in a house worth less than half the value, and the stress that comes with that. And people don't understand the stress that comes with that kind of thing. I mean, when you're getting letters to your door for £100,000 off a debt, it's quite frightening.
Stephen, thank you.